This is Smarter San Diego TV.
Millennials and baby boomers alike, they want to be in urban environments right now.
Thank God for the Electoral College vote.
In a 4-hour breakfast, we raised $9,000. So that's something that we take pretty seriously.
And you can't diet your way into being lean and fit. They go together.
In New York City deciding what's best for the rest of the freaking country.
This is not a market built on a stack of cards. It's a solid foundation.
0%. That is a thumbs up.
Everyone has a life worth telling a story about. And the more adversity that you faced, the deeper your story.
Well, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be able to walk?
There's just so much creativity in this town that it's hard to hide it.
Well, you have these beliefs, well, what do you do with it?
The Life of the Party is here to help you navigate the selling and buying process in San Diego real estate. Give it up for the broker associate of Welcome to San Diego Real Estate, Nicole Hazelton.
And she's back. The Life of the Party is here. Nicole Hazelton, how are you doing?
Thank you. I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. Obviously, you've participated on Win This Listing.
I did.
A couple of times.
Yes.
And so you know that I talk to home sellers on a regular basis, every single day actually. This market right now, because values have gone up, really seems to be kind of like a move-up market.
Yes.
Right? You bought your house 5-6 years ago. It's gone up a lot in value. You look at it and you go, hey, we got the equity to put a down payment on a bigger house. Let's giddy up. But there are a lot of things that come with a sell-buy scenario. And almost every person I talk to when this listing, it's a sell-buy scenario. They want to sell one house, buy another house, concurrently, one move. So we have you here today, obviously, to talk about what that looks like. And how do you navigate that in this particular marketplace? So what are the first things that people should think about in that situation?
Gosh, it's funny because everyone thinks that the finesse of that type of deal where you're selling and buying concurrently comes at the very end when everyone's starting to move and trying to work out the move in, move out situation. It starts at the very beginning with the contracts. So there's so many balls in the air at any given time for that type of transaction. So if you're the client, you're selling your property, you're going to use your equity to purchase the other property. The first thing you need to think about is when you find a buyer for your property, you have to have a contingency in place to locate your replacement property. If you don't, you might be selling your property and you might be out of a place to live. So that's number one.
Okay, so you need a contingency so that you can find a place on the other side, okay?
Now at the same time, you're out looking at properties with your agent, you're writing offers that are contingent on your sale of your property. So when you find that magical property and the seller on that property decides to work with you, chances are that seller's also moving up. So there could be more than one transaction happening at the same time.
Is this the three-legged dog we've had, three-legged stool or whatever we've talked about in the past?
Yes.
So first things first, I mean, I think that's one of the questions that people ask me the most is, well, what do I do? We have to find our home first before we can sell ours. Is that right? I mean, is that the way you should go about it? Or is that just sort of setting yourself up for failure? You look for a year, you find the house you love, but then you don't have your house sold yet, so then you can't even get it.
You should definitely put your house on the market and then have that contingency in place. Know that you're not going to jump into a contract until you have located that replacement property, but you'll have more purchasing power when the right property comes along if you have a buyer for your property. So let's say that magical property comes along, you want to make a move. Well, that seller doesn't feel comfortable with you, that you don't even have your property listed on the market. So you'll have more purchasing power to have your offer accepted on that replacement property if you have your property, number one, listed, and even better if you have that property in escrow.
The Seinfeld generation, we call that having hand.
Yeah.
You want to have hand.
You want to have hand.
And you don't have hand if you're empty on your side.
Right.
But if you're full on your side, meaning you have a buyer in contract, you're in escrow, then you have hand. It's like, yeah, we're moving soon.
Right.
So it actually is, for sellers, that's kind of a motivating deal, right? It's like, hey, that's a good thing because these people, when their house sells, they're going to have to come in here.
They're going to have
That's
to
pretty
come in.
motivated buyer right there.
Yep, and then you want to set the expectations for that seller when you're the buyer. So when you're initially writing the contract, you want to ask them up front, hey, I might ask you for an interim occupancy agreement. You know, you might ask them if you can move in a little bit earlier than close of escrow. Chances are they're going to say no, but that makes sense too when you're selling your property. When your buyer comes in, you're going to have to ask that buyer if they're comfortable with you leasing the property back for a couple of days while you're closing on your new property, because you're going to need the funds on your sale to close on the new property, which means you have to close on that property, but you're not going to have any place to move until you close on the replacement property. So you have to have a couple of days of wiggle room, and if you set the expectation right up front and you say while you're negotiating the contracts, this is what we're going to need to do. On the sale of our property, we might need to stay in a couple of extra days while we wire the funds, while we close on our replacement property. And then you get into all the fun things like the termite inspection. So let's say if the buyer on your place asked you to provide termite clearance. Well, when are you going to provide that? You need to be moved out of the property or vacate the property while the property is being tented. So those are types of things that you can write in or out of the transaction, maybe agree to do it.
As you become a man here,
Yeah.
live on camera.
Agree to do it after close.
And I've been hiding this for years, but
There's something I need to tell you. There's something to be said about equal pay. But no, the finesse of the deal really comes at the beginning when you're negotiating the contract. So if you're offering to your buyer that you're going to provide termite clearance in the close, maybe you keep that out of the initial purchase agreement and you have that as a separate addendum so you can do that termite work after you've left the property.
Okay.
I've had a lot of transactions where the seller has 3 dogs and they have a fridge full of food and they're not moving into their replacement property for a week until they close escrow, but we need to have termite clearance to close their sale so that they can get their funds to close their purchase. So it's just a lot of moving parts.
A lot of chicken and the egg stuff going on.
A lot of chicken and the egg.
You know, people, I think, are a little misguided in their own thoughts about this because everyone seems to say the same thing. Well, we got to find the next house before we can sell this one. This house is going to sell right away, right? And everyone believes that. And in this hot market, in some cases, they're right. But right away isn't necessarily tomorrow afternoon.
Correct.
You know, there's a lot of things you have to do to sell a home. So I think what you're saying is position yourself, once you're serious, position yourself by listing your property and then be ready to negotiate terms based on whether you've found your next property or not.
Right.
In other words, someone comes in, they say, write a contract, say, hey, we want to move in, 10-day close, and we want to move in. You say, no, I can't do it. We need to close on this and then stay here for a month or 2 while we find another house. If you want to negotiate that, you can. But you still have to have that buyer in place, and that's the thing that could take time.
Right, and you have contingencies in place. So the best case scenario is if you have a property that you think is sellable and you're going to have multiple offers in this market, then fantastic. You will find a buyer that will wait for you to find your replacement property. And if that buyer ends up backing out, you'll have backup buyers in turn to pick up the pieces and come in where they left off. So then you work your contingencies that concurrently with your sale and your purchase. You find that property, you get into escrow, you're doing your home inspection, your appraisal, getting your loan ducks in order while your buyer is doing the same thing on your property. So they don't technically have to start their time frames until you've found that replacement property, and then you're moving through the motions concurrently at the same time, and you're planning those contingency time frames around when your buyer is releasing contingencies. You make your deposit on that replacement property the same as what your buyer's deposit has on the line, so that you're completely covered 100%. If something goes wrong on your replacement, you're not forced to sell your home. And I have seen that happen, not with my clients.
It happens.
It happens.
It sure does. I sure hope it doesn't happen to you out there, but
Yeah.
there are ways to avoid it. Use a good agent like Nicole. So here's, I guess what we're learning today is that, putting your home on the market is the first step. Now, what do you think about let's go back to the 3-legged stool. So if I am doing a contingent deal myself, do I want to make an offer on a property where they're doing the same thing? In other words, do I want to become the buyer similar to the buyer on my property on someone else's property where they, it's like this daisy chain could go on forever, right?
It can.
So
I've seen it up to 5. I've seen it up to 5 properties at the same time. Talk about the level of stress. It worked.
See, and that's incredible to me because that's so many variables involved there. Should I not be concerned about that on the buy side?
If you are working with a good agent and your agent tells you that they're going to have an open line of communication with that listing agent and that listing agent is competent and has done that type of transaction before, then you should not be afraid to get into a situation like that. It can be done. I've seen it happen.
Yeah. So it can be done, but maybe be conscious of it. Of what's going on.
And the level of stress can be higher because now you have a seller on that end. They're not just selling an investment property that they're liquidating and they already are in another property. You're dealing with a seller that's also going to have a high level of stress. because they're trying to get into their replacement property. They're going through inspections on their deal, but know going into it that they might need to buy some time, which means you might need to also buy some time with your buyer. So if you've got that sellable property and you're having a lot of interest and your agent is going to continue to do backup showings while you've got that tied up with a buyer, then it will work out.
Okay, so be very open with communication, all parties.
Yes.
Stay involved. Don't just assume that everything's going to work out perfectly. There may be a hitch here and there, but as long as everyone's on the same page about making it work, it should be okay.
Right.
Anything particular that you think, because there are also people who are moving down too.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
happening. Although this is what we would call a move-up market because equity's up. Some people are empty nested or whatever it may be, or they're finally cashing out on that home they've had for 30 years and whatever, you know.
Right sizing.
Right sizing, yeah, right size it up. Any tricks of the trade people should know about either direction really in just a market that's like this, low inventory, high demand?
You know, just having your ducks in a row. So whether you're buying up or you're moving down and downsizing, having your loan pre-approved, and there's lenders that will issue a full approval on your loan subject to the property. So that will give you the purchasing power. Having your other property listed for sale, having the purchasing power to show on your contingency of the property sale agreement that you're checking the box, yes, my property is in escrow, this is the MLS number, my agent is sending them the MLS listing and a copy of our listing agreement, and we're also writing a cover letter that says, hey, once we have a new property in escrow, we are going to be completely 100% motivated and flexible to sell our property. So we're going to start to get aggressive.
Are there any deals left in this marketplace?
Deals? I think there are deals. It just depends on the neighborhood that you're looking for. I still think you can negotiate a great price. The rates are still historically low, even though they bumped up, you know, slightly after elections. I think rates are going to continue to rise.
What about downtown?
Downtown.
Italy, that, you know, your whole hood.
Little Italy and East
Yeah,
Village.
any deals still down there?
Definitely deals to be had. Actually, there's been a level, a higher increase in inventory in the under 400,000 price point.
Really?
So I've been seeing quite a few loft studios and one bedrooms list in VA approved buildings, which is great. So, you know, you can have an FHA approved building or a VA approved building or a conventional, but conventional you can finance 3.5% to 5% down, VA 100%, FHA 3.5%.
You're telling me there's more inventory, so there's more to choose from in those
There's
areas.
more to choose from.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay, that's a huge tip right there, especially for the VA buyers who want to live the downtown lifestyle. It's also really close to Coronado, which is nice, you know, for them because it's a really short trip. I mean, a lot of these guys live, you know, really far out neighborhoods and stuff like that. So.
Well, yeah, and the new UCSD college extension for their campus is coming downtown, and the Ritz-Carlton is in the process of being built, and all of the development in the East Village. So if you're buying on the outskirts of East Village at places like Metrome and Smart Corner and Icon, that will eventually be the central East Village location.
Totally agree. Great stuff. Nicole Hazelton, thank you so much for being here. Really
Thank you.
appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Stick around for more Smarter San Diego TV, where we guarantee to make you smarter than everyone else, commercial free.